Magic Earth, Cap 7. The first hours heading south hurt more inside than in their feet. Outwardly, everything seemed almost calm. The wind pushed Jack and Spes from behind with a strange care, as if approving their departure from Eldoria. The snow crunched low under their boots. The sky was a gray canvas, with no lightning, no heavy clouds. Seen from afar, they would be just two travelers crossing a white field. Inside, Jack felt that every step was a small betrayal. 10 steps. He saw his father sitting at the tavern table, opening the note with a calloused hand. 20 steps. He imagined Melanie closing windows that probably wouldn't help much. 30 steps. He saw Liz trying to turn fear into a 15-second trick, repeating the same illusion until exhausted. When his chest tightened too much, he returned to the count. 10 steps. Breathe. 10 steps. Breathe. Spes walked a few yards ahead. From behind, he looked only tired. Shoulders slumped, heavy cloak, hands hidden in his sleeves. Nothing about him resembled the man who had crushed an army with a gesture. If some of his magic was returning, it was mixed with years of exile and a guilt that Jack still didn't understand. For a time, no one spoke. The only sound was the snow. "How far south do we need to walk?" Jack finally asked, unable to bear the silence. Spes did not slow down. "Far enough that Noyle will have to work to reach us," he answered, "and to find a place where people can still say no." Jack swallowed hard. "And you know where that is?" A short pause. "No," Spes admitted, "but I know it's not behind us." The words felt heavy. Jack walked a few more steps and couldn't resist. He looked over his shoulder. Eldoria already looked small, a dark blur cutting the white of the plain. The towers of Arrow's castle were barely fine lines on the horizon. Around the lower districts, near the river, a clear band embraced the streets. Mist, lying on the ground like a forgotten sheet. From afar, it looked harmless. It looked like only humidity. Jack turned quickly, as if looking too long might pull him back. When his eyes returned to the path, they noticed something else. The southern horizon was no longer the same uniform gray. A yellowish, almost timid line had appeared there, like light passing through dirty glass. They walked a little more. The yellow thickened. It turned a sickly gold. Then, a dark orange spread beneath the clouds. "Spes!" Jack called. The man raised his face and saw it too. Far away, straight ahead, a dark mass was beginning to rise from the line of the world. It didn't fall from the sky. It rose from the ground, pushing the firmament up, as if something beneath was turning the world's dome over. It grew too fast. Within minutes, the blur became a sheer wall. Inside it, short sparks flashed, muffled, without the sharpness of normal lightning. The wind changed. The gentle push at their backs vanished. An icy blow came straight from the south, bringing a metallic taste to Jack's mouth, as if he had bitten an old coin. "That's not a normal storm," he murmured. "It is not," Spes confirmed. "Noyle is closing the path." The wall rose higher, spreading to the sides until it looked like a lid being fitted over the world. The first thunder did not sound like thunder. The sound came from all sides at once. From the sky, from the ground, from inside Jack's ribs. A grave vibration that made his teeth rattle. "We need shelter," Spes said. They both looked around. For a moment, there was only white. Then Jack saw it. To the right, a block of dark stone broke the plain, isolated, like a broken tooth. "There," he pointed. They started running. The more they ran, the more the storm seemed to awaken. The wind ceased to be a breeze and became a punch. Snow broke away from the ground in long ribbons that lashed their legs like cold whips. Day suddenly darkened, as if someone had run a hand across the sky and extinguished the light. They reached the stone almost stumbling. Spes pressed his back against the rock and pulled Jack close, pinning him there as if he were another part of the stone. "Open your cloak," he ordered curtly. "We'll make a roof." Jack obeyed without argument. Together, they raised their cloaks over their heads, fastened the edges with shoulders and elbows, used their own weight to hold the fabric in place. They built a kind of crooked tent, leaning against the stone. In front, they left only a narrow gap for air. The storm arrived as if the world had decided to collapse all at once. A dry crack split the air, so loud that Jack felt the vibration in the rock. For an instant, everything seemed suspended. No wind, no sound, no anything. Then, the air fell on them like a heavy body. The cloak lashed out, trying to escape their hands. The snow turned into a shower of hard dots, hitting the fabric and finding crevices to reach their faces and necks. Each time Jack stiffened his legs, the wind pulled him out, as if trying to rip him away by the hood. Spes shoved him back with his shoulder. "Don't fight it!" he shouted, his mouth almost against his ear. "Let it pass over us." Everything in Jack wanted to do the opposite. But every attempt to become a wall seemed to animate the storm. Trembling, he began to yield slightly, bending his knees, curving his body, sticking even closer to the stone. Instead of resisting, he tried to be dead weight. Time ceased to have form. The roar all around was a single, too-long note. Without variation, there was no clock. The pain in his hands mixed with the cold in his arms, which mixed with the numbness in his legs. Jack lost track of his own body. At some point, he stopped feeling his nose. Then, his fingers. At another, he realized he was breathing too fast and tried to slow down. Thoughts began to slip away. A part of him whispered that it was enough to let go of the cloak, lie down in the snow, close his eyes. It would be easier. It would be silent. Another part almost agreed, until he realized he couldn't clearly recall Lys's face. He knew her hair, her way of speaking, but the image came back blurry. Fear brought him back. He let go of the cloak with one hand, shoved his fingers through the front gap, and grabbed a handful of snow. He squeezed so hard that his skin seemed to burn. The cold shock pulled him back into his own body. Spes spoke without turning his face. "Don't sleep. If you sleep, the storm chooses for you." Jack didn't ask what that meant. He didn't want to hear the answer. At some point he thought he heard, mixed with the roar, the distant sound of a bell, 3 spaced tolls, like Arrow's castle alert. Before he could be sure, the sound dissolved into the wind. It could be memory. It could be Eldoria trying to reach him. It could be nothing. The cold changed place. It ceased to be needles on the skin and turned into a weight inside, clutched to his chest, behind his eyes. When he tried to imagine the tavern, he only saw the door. When he thought of the smell of bone broth, he found a smellless void. He clung, then, to the only thing that still felt solid, the stone at his back. It took him a moment to realize the roar was different. It didn't end all at once. It started to falter. Small intervals of silence between one gust and the next. The cloak no longer slapped his face as hard. The air was still icy, but it came in breaths, not in punches. Spes waited a little longer. "Storms like this lie," he murmured. "Sometimes they stop just to see who lets go first." They remained motionless, counting only their own breaths, until the silence truly lengthened. Then Spes lifted a corner of the cloak. A pale light trickled in. He stepped out first, testing the wind with his face. Jack followed, stepping slowly on the renewed snow. The world was white as before, but Jack felt, on his skin and deep inside, that nothing was the same anymore. When Jack stepped completely out from under the cloak, he had the impression that something was misaligned. The air felt the same, cold and clean, but it lacked weight. The plain ahead was too smooth, too white, without marks, as if the world had turned a new page. He took a deep breath and felt a sharp pain in his chest. Perhaps he had been trapped for too long in that tiny space. Or perhaps it was something else. Spes walked a few steps ahead, scrutinizing the sky with half-closed eyes. There was no sun. There were no shadows. The world seemed illuminated by a light without a source, coming from nowhere. Jack realized that the silence was also strange. It was not the natural silence of snow, soft and welcoming. It was an applied silence, as if someone had removed the sounds that should exist. The distant echo, the whistle of the wind between the stones, the crackle of the cold. "Is this normal?" Jack asked. Spes didn't answer immediately. He studied the horizon for too long. "Normal for Noyle," he finally said. "He doesn't just move, he erases the path from where he came." Jack frowned. "Erases?" Spes nodded, tapping his own chest with 2 slow beats, as one reinforcing a memory he fears losing. "A common storm destroys. This storm here replaces. It trades the world for a version that obeys his silence." Jack felt a shiver run down his neck. For a moment, he tried to imagine the storm as something with intention, like a gigantic hand that redesigned the landscape. It was difficult. But something inside him warned that Spes was not speaking poetically. He was speaking literally. "Let's go," Spes said, resuming his walk with measured steps. "The closer we stay to Eldoria, the faster the mist reaches us." Jack didn't want to look back. But he did. And he nearly fell to his knees. The entire valley where Eldoria should be was now a sea of mist. Not a thin, low mist. It was a dense white wall that rose high enough to hide half the sky. It moved slowly, like deep breathing. It climbed the hill inch by inch. And worse, the white mass was much closer than before the storm. "Noyle advanced while we were trapped," Jack said hoarsely. "Advanced a lot." Spes didn't deny it. "Yes, he used the time he stole from us, and he will keep using it." Jack closed his eyes. The image of the tavern came strong and painful. The note in his father's hands, Melanie's worried look, and Liz. She would probably be at the window, trying to see something through the white. He took a deep breath, but the air burned going in. "My family," he murmured. "I should have gone back. I should have ignored everything. I should have." "You should not have," Spes interrupted, in an unexpectedly firm tone. "Going back now would only give Noyle one more mind to use. He wants this. He wants you. He wants you to think little, feel much, and decide quickly." Jack stared at Spes with anger and pain. "You don't understand. It's my family." Spes held his shoulder. "I understand. Better than you think." There was truth there, an old, heavy truth. But Jack didn't have the strength to ask who Spes was talking about. Maybe he didn't want to know. They walked in silence for some time. The plain seemed larger than the day before, as if the world were stretching distances on purpose. Jack noticed that his steps were heavy, but it wasn't physical fatigue. It was something else. A strange feeling, as if part of him wanted to stop, sit in the snow, close his eyes and stay there. Stay. Just that. Without thinking, without fighting. He shook his head, trying to ward off the stupor. "Did you feel that?" he asked, without hiding his concern. Spes observed him carefully. "Yes," he sighed. "The storm leaves traces. Even without mist, it leaves a kind of stillness. An echo. This is what Noyle spreads." Jack hardened his jaw. "And are we going to cross this all the way to the south?" "As far as the world still has a voice," Spes replied. The phrase sounded too somber. When night began to fall, Something changed in the quality of the darkness. It didn't arrive slowly, smoky, as winter nights usually come. It came like a door slamming shut. Jack stopped dead. "Is that normal?" "No," Spes answered. "Noyle is pulling the night here." Jack didn't understand. "Pulling?" Spes looked around, alert. The darker it gets, the more power he has. Noyle was born from absence, from weariness, from silence. Night is fertile ground. He wants magic earth to sink into a deep night. Without dawn, without morning, only night. Jack felt his blood run cold. And if he succeeds? Spes didn't need to answer. They kept walking until they found a cluster of rocks, too small for a cave, big enough to offer some protection against the icy wind. Spes raised his hand as if to test the air. He didn't conjure magic, nor did he try. He just listened. Jack saw his eyes change. Something is approaching. Jack pulled out his dagger, useless against magic, useless against monsters created by Noyle's will, but it was all he had. For a moment, they heard nothing. Then a low, rhythmic sound came. Tock, 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 like large claws scratching the ground. Jack felt his throat dry up. From the darkness, a silhouette emerged. First, one head. Then another, and another. The body was the size of a robust horse, but more crouched, heavier. The three heads had elongated muzzles, exposed teeth, and red eyes burning in the dark like coals about to burst. Jack whispered, "A Cerberus." The monster growled, but the growl was not loud. It was grave, contained, as if holding itself back. The three heads turned toward them at the same time. Spes took a step forward, his body rigid. "Stay behind me," he said. Jack hesitated but obeyed. The Cerberus advanced, and Spes, using more strength than he had shown since Arrow's castle, raised his hand and made a short gesture, an invisible push that wasn't pure magic, but a weak mix of reflex and ancient power. The monster recoiled half a step. It didn't flee, but it recoiled. Spes was out of breath. "It didn't come to kill us," he murmured, "only to measure. Noyle is testing the ground. He wants to see how far we are from giving up." Jack swallowed hard. "He wants us to stop? He wants us to yield," Spes corrected. "Stopping is easy. Yielding is automatic." The Cerberus held its gaze for long seconds, as if waiting for them to lower their guard. When it saw it wouldn't happen, it turned and retreated into the darkness, silent as falling snow. It took Jack a while to breathe again. The night, now, seemed thicker, more alive, more dangerous. "That was just the beginning," Spes said, almost a whisper. And Jack believed him. The next night arrived sooner than expected. Jack and Spes kept walking until the sky turned to charcoal. There was no sunset, just a shadow that trickled across the horizon, silent, until it covered everything like spilled ink. It was impossible to distinguish where the sky began or ended. The wind had changed. It no longer brought the usual cold of the plain, but a metallic smell, almost of blood. Spes stopped abruptly. "He's changed the rhythm," he said, alert. "This is no longer just night. It is his territory." Jack felt his stomach sink. "Do you think we'll be attacked again?" Spes did not answer immediately. He tilted his head, as one listening to something Jack couldn't hear. "The exiles," he began slowly. "Before they were lost to the mist, many had the magic of form transformation. They molded creatures from what was left of human imagination. Some were guardians, others weapons. Over time, Noyle absorbed everything." Jack's eyes widened. "So these things, these creatures, are their creations?" Spes nodded, and there was sadness in the gesture. "Created or modified, It depends on how much of their mind was left when they molded. To them, they were perfect soldiers. To Noyle, they are just obedient shadows. Jack closed his hand around the dagger. It was useless, he knew, but it was better than empty hands. And how many of these shadows exist? Spes sighed, tired. As many as it takes to make us give up. The first sign came as a low, deep bellow that resonated in Jack's chest even before it reached his ears. It seemed to come from all sides at once. They were in an area of packed snow with some scattered ice blocks, enough to create shadows that danced as the wind shifted. The largest shadow appeared first, tall, heavy, dragging its paws as if the earth wasn't strong enough to support it. When it entered the small circle of gloom, Jack felt his body seize up. A bull. Or almost. Its chest was wide, monstrous, marked by lines of twisted flesh. The muscles trembled like ropes about to snap. Its hooves left deep holes in the snow, but the head was that of a gigantic bat. Long, arched ears, narrow nostrils, vibrating as if sensing the smell of fear, and eyes. 2 red points that did not reflect light. They produced it. A mixture, Spes said, almost a whisper, made by hands that forgot their own name. The bullbat saw the 2 of them, and it charged. Jack barely had time to react. Spes pulled him aside seconds before the giant hooves crushed the ground where he had been standing. The creature roared. The sound cut through the air like a blade. Jack felt his head throbbing. "Run!" Spes yelled. They ran. The heavy snow made their steps difficult. The monster came behind, its hooves opening craters in the ground. Jack darted to the right, Spes to the left, trying to confuse the creature. For an instant, it worked. The beast hesitated, unsure which target to pursue. Spes raised his hand. A quick gesture, a discharge of invisible force. Small, weak, but enough to make the bullbat stumble. Jack took advantage of the hesitation and ran toward a formation of low rocks. It wasn't shelter, but it was something. The creature recovered and targeted Spes. Spes retreated, but he was slower than Jack. The monster lunged at him with brutal force, opening its short wings, useless for flying, but perfect for unbalancing. Jack saw the moment Spes fell, saw the creature preparing to crush him, and he didn't think. He yelled and ran toward the monster, raising the dagger with both hands. He knew it was stupid. He knew it was useless. But if he didn't do something, Spes would die. He leaped, putting his whole body into a single desperate strike. The dagger hit the side of the creature and bounced off, without penetrating. But the impact made the monster lose its balance for half a second. It was the half second that saved Spes. The man rolled away, coughing, while Jack fell into the snow, stunned. Spes didn't have time to catch his breath. He made a short movement with his hand, almost a spasm, and the snow around the bullbat rose in a whirlwind. It wasn't an attack. It was a distraction. It was all he could conjure. The creature roared again, irritated by the snow in its eyes, and backed off just enough for them to escape. The 2 ran until they no longer felt the sound of hooves. They ran until their legs failed. They ran until the world was out of breath. When they finally stopped, Jack fell to his knees. "This isn't going to stop, is it?" he said, his voice breaking. Spes took a deep breath. "No, Jack, it won't." The third night brought what seemed impossible. Something worse. Jack no longer felt his fingers. His legs trembled on their own. Sleeping was dangerous, but being awake hurt. The mist on the horizon now rose and fell as if breathing, more alive with every hour. "Spes," Jack whispered. "We can't keep going like this." "We must," Spes replied, with effort. "Noyle wants to break us before we can find the deep south." It was then they heard it. Laughter. High-pitched, short, repeated laughter. Laughter that wasn't happy. It was sharp, insane. like blades laughing at each other. Jack felt his body freeze in a new way. "What is that?" Spes closed his eyes for an instant. "Hyenas," he murmured. "Modified hyenas." The laughter got closer. 5 shadows appeared between the rocks, elongated bodies, strong legs, a smile too wide, showing rows of jagged teeth, and on their backs, short wings, but large enough for quick bursts, long jumps, red eyes, always red. Jack didn't have time to speak. The 5 charged together. They were fast, much faster than the previous monsters. The first leap came from the right. Jack threw himself to the ground. The winged hyena passed over him, scraping the snow with its claws. Spes tried to raise his hand to conjure something, but a second hyena hit him on the shoulder, knocking him down. He rolled and got up by instinct, but he was already bleeding. "Stay close to me," he shouted. Jack tried to reach him, but a third hyena positioned itself between them, smiling that nightmare smile. The creatures circled. 5 shadows, 5 mouths, 5 pairs of wings trembling with anticipation. Jack knew it ended here. No matter how much he ran, no matter how much he shouted, there was no escaping. There was no fighting. Noyle had won. The hyenas took 1 step back, lowered their bodies, and leaped all at once. Jack closed his eyes. And then... a sound sliced through the air. It wasn't wind. It was metal moving too fast. A spear ran through the first hyena, an arrow, the second. 2 others were knocked down by quick, precise blows. Jack opened his eyes. He saw silhouettes. Many. Armed. Marching in unison. "Who?" he whispered. The hyenas died in seconds, and then the figures approached, revealing different crests. One with the wind of Iroh, one with the mind of Nopsum, one with the metamorphosis of Mutar. The 3 kingdoms, united. Jack couldn't believe what he saw. The soldiers made way, and between them, 3 men walked until they stopped before Spes and Jack. Iroh, Mutar, Nopsum. Iroh took a step forward, planted his spear in the ground, and spoke. "We come in peace." Jack felt the world spin. Iroh looked Spes in the eye. "We need an alliance," he said. "Alone, none of us will survive what is coming." The night, behind them, listened in silence. For an instant, no one spoke. The wind passed slowly between the bodies, carrying the smell of blood from the dead hyenas and the cold sweat of men who had almost been devoured. The mist to the north seemed to have paused to watch. The whole world took short breaths. Jack didn't know where to look. He looked at the soldiers with the mixed crests, at the still-stained spears, at the torn wings on the ground. Finally his gaze settled on Iroh, a marked cloak, unshaven beard, eyes that no longer held the arrogance of the throne. He was not the king Jack had seen in the Hall of Winds. He was a tired man sustaining the weight of a fractured kingdom. How did you find us?" Jack asked, unable to stop himself. The one who answered was Nopsum. His voice seemed weaker than before, as if only the shell of who he had been remained. "Traces," he said. "Not of footsteps, of decisions. You left a trail of strange choices, and even with little magic, I can still hear what minds scream when they want to live." Jack didn't fully understand, but he believed it. Mutar, beside him, kept his broken staff resting on the ground. The man who had once warped forms and created illusions now seemed almost ordinary, limited to a body that betrayed him. "Noyle is closing the kingdoms as if they were 3 drawers, he said bitterly. "And even then, we were still fighting over who had the prettiest handle." Iroh took a deep breath and stepped forward, approaching Spes. "Thomas," he said, calling him by his old name, one that had been hero, exile, and curse. "For a long time, I believed the greatest threat to the world was you. Then, I thought it was my own weaknesses. Now I understand that the true danger is not a man, nor a king, nor a mistake. It is what takes advantage of all of them at once. Spes met his gaze. He looked older than the day before, as if every creature faced had taken a year of his life with it. Noyle is just that, he replied. He invents nothing. He just uses what we leave lying around. The two measured each other for a moment that felt too long. Jack felt his heart pounding. It was strange to see those men together. The same ones who had tried to destroy Spes at the crossroads were now here, their boots sinking into the same snow, under the same night pushed closer by the same enemy. "Why did you come?" Jack asked, more to fill the silence than out of curiosity. Arrow looked at him, and there was something different in that look. It wasn't the coldness of a king speaking to a subject. It was the look of someone who knew they needed a boy who didn't understand. "Because the mist didn't stop at Eldoria," he answered. "It passed the borders. It took small villages, crop fields, entire roads. What were once rumors are now certainties. Our armies can't even organize themselves. The men we send to contain the mist, they stop asking questions. They stop being afraid. They stop thinking. And then they disappear." Mutar completed. "Appearances no longer hold anyone. Without magic, I am just an old man with a cracked staff. The halls I used to adorn with illusions now show leaks, cracks, low ceilings. And for the first time, the soldiers can see it. They see our castles as they really are." There was almost a sad smile there. Nopsum spoke last. "And I who always entered others' minds to find answers. Now I find silence. Not the healthy silence of someone sleeping. The silence of emptiness, of an unfurnished house. The closer the mist approaches, the harder it is to hear anything human. Noyle wants this. An entire world looking vacant on the inside." Jack felt a strange pang. This mirrored what he himself had been feeling, the urge to sit down, to stop, to give up without drama. Just not to go on. Spes wiped a trickle of blood from the corner of his mouth and finally broke the barrier that still remained between him and the kings. "So you understand," he said. "Your magic is weak. Mine is patched together. Soldiers can kill creatures, but they can't kill a direction. Noyle isn't an army. He is a habit of the world. As long as each of you tries to save only your own castle, the entire map rots." Arrow nodded. "That's why we came." He took a deep breath. "Not to capture you, not to judge you. We came to ask for an alliance." The word dropped into the air like a new weight. Jack looked from Spes to Iroh, from Iroh to the other kings, and felt something akin to anger rising. It was difficult to accept the sudden willingness to unite from those who, just days before, had ordered him arrested and Spes killed. "Now you want help," he said, unable to restrain his tone. "Now that everything is falling apart, you remembered he was useful, that I was useful." Iroh did not retort. He just stared at him with uncomfortable honesty. "Yes," he answered simply. "Now. Before, I still believed there was time to maintain my pride. Now, I just want to keep my people alive. Pride doesn't protect anyone from the night." Mutar cast a curious look at Jack. "You talk as if you don't have the right to be angry," he commented. "You do. You can hate us all you want. But in the end, either we walk in the same direction, or no one walks at all." Spes intervened, his voice lower. "Jack." The boy turned his face. "What Noyle wants isn't just your family, or just Eldoria, or just one kingdom. He wants the kind of world where no one asks why anymore. If we accept this, it doesn't matter who was right before." Jack swallowed hard. He caught a glimpse of the dead hyenas in the snow, the distant shadow of the mist covering the north, his father's face turning into a blur in his memory. He also felt something stretching inside, as if the rope of his revolt was about to snap. Finally, he took a deep breath, his chest aching. "So what do you want to do?" he asked. The group moved to a slightly higher spot, where some rocks offered a kind of natural amphitheater. The soldiers formed a wide circle, torches raised. The yellow light cut across armor, tired faces, eyes that had seen too much mist. In the center, only Jack, Spes, Aero, Mutar, and Nopsum. Spes drew 3 dots in the snow with the tip of his boot. "A plant in each castle," he said, returning to something he had told Jack before. Since the beginning, root, leaf, and flower. The kingdoms were built around them without fully understanding what they were. They used them more as a symbol than as power. Iroh confirmed with a short nod. "At first we thought they were divine inheritances," he explained. "Then, relics. But the more we studied them, the less they responded. It was as if they knew it wasn't the right time." Mutar added, "I tried to change the shape of the one in my castle. It didn't even move. It is the only thing in the kingdom that doesn't obey my will." Nopsum gave a slight smile. "And mine. I could never read it. It is like this boy," he said, gesturing to Jack with his chin. "A blind spot within my own territory." Jack felt a chill. It was uncomfortable to be compared to something the kings both feared and revered. Spes continued. "These plants won't defeat Noyle alone. They are not a weapon. They are anchors. They remind the world that it can stop before it collapses entirely. United, they might be able to open a space for decision. A breach, a few days, a few hours. Enough for someone to make the right choice." Aero crossed his arms. "And who would that someone be?" he asked. Spes looked at Jack. He didn't need to say anything. Jack felt the weight of that silence. "Me?" The word came out louder than he intended. "I don't have magic. I just undo others." "Precisely," Spes replied. "Noyle feeds on the weak, lazy, and automatic use of magic. You are a point where that breaks, where his flow fails. If the plants create a space and you are within it, perhaps we can make Noyle stumble." Mutar laughed without humor. "A plan based on perhaps," he commented. "Very much like Elion," Nopsum completed. "And very much like those who have nothing left." Iroh looked north for a long moment. "Then that's it," he decided. "We will go for the 3 plants, open this breach, and within it, we will bet everything on this boy who shouldn't exist." Jack wanted to protest, to say he wasn't a hero, that he was scared, that he just wanted his family back. The words rose to his throat and died there, because in truth, nothing he could say would change the fact that the world had already passed the point of no return. He just nodded, slowly. "And until then?" he asked. "What do we do now?" Spes let out a breath, as if he had been holding that sigh for days. "Now," he said. "We walk together. Men, exiles, kings, the magicless. Noyle knows how to divide us. We will force him to deal with a whole world, at least for a little while longer." When they left, the formation was strange and new. In the center, Jack and Spes. In front, Iroh. To the left, Mutar. To the right, Nopsum. Behind and around, soldiers from the 3 kingdoms walked in silence, torches held high, forming a kind of walking constellation in the middle of the snow. To the north, the mist seemed to rise a little higher, irritated that it had failed to swallow them that night. To the south, the deep darkness still waited, dense, with no promises. Every step forward crunched too loudly in the world's silence, as if magic earth itself was paying attention. Jack looked north one last time. He imagined, under that sheet of whiteness, a room with a messy bed, a girl performing 15-second tricks. a man reading a crumpled note, and a woman closing windows that no longer stopped anything. "I'll be back," he whispered, not knowing who he was talking to. No one answered, but for an instant, the wind coming from behind felt less cold. He turned his face and followed Spes's pace. The night kept closing in. Noyle kept prowling, but for the first time, Magic Earth was not walking in separate kingdoms. It walked as a single body. And bodies, unlike mists, could decide to change direction.